uranium ore is mined and processed into yellowcake. At a conversion plant, it becomes uranium hexafluoride, UF6, and is filled into sealed steel cylinders. Enrichment raises the share of the U-235 isotope for reactor fuel. The enriched UF6 is then converted back into a stable black powder UO2, pressed into hard ceramic pellets, and stacked inside long zirconium tubes called fuel rods. Bundled into precision assemblies, those rods are loaded into a reactor core. Heat makes steam, steam spins a turbine, and turbines make electricity. Inside that steel cylinder is uranium hexafluoride, UF6, a salt that's solid at room temperature but turns to gas with a little heat. The canister itself is part of the safety system: thick steel walls, a protected valve, and stamped IDs that tie it to shipping papers and custody logs. You'll often hear two sizes mentioned: the big 48Y used for natural UF6 coming from conversion, and the smaller 30B used for enriched product, leaving an enrichment plant. For shipping, cylinders ride inside rugged overpacks that protect the valve, provide impact and fire resistance, and keep the package stable if something goes wrong. Before any movement, operators weigh and sample the cylinder to confirm what's inside. Before any receipt, the new site does it again. One more detail: tamper evidence seals on the valve cover. If anyone tried to open it, inspectors will know instantly. A UF6 cylinder isn't just steel and paperwork, it's a monitored container in a monitored system. Over the valve cap sits a tamper evidence seal, a small device with a unique ID and often a photo, logged before shipment. Break it or swap it, and the mismatch shows up immediately. Facilities also record weights, temperatures, and assay results at dispatch and receipt. If anything's off, the alarm bells ring. Inspectors can spot check cylinders on site, compare IDs to records, and verify seals against their photos or holograms. Some locations add surveillance cameras or remote data that track cylinder movements inside the plant. The point isn't making theft impossible, it's making undetected access effectively impossible. When the seal, the numbers, and the logs all agree, the canister's contents are trusted to be exactly what they should be. Moving uranium hexafluoride starts with one rule: the package is the safety system. The cylinder sits inside a rugged overpack that shields the valve, absorbs impact, and protects against fire. UF6 usually ships solid, kept cool so it won't turn to gas, and it's kept dry, because UF6 reacts with moisture to form corrosive acids. Before a truck rolls or a rail car moves, crews verify IDs, weights, temperature, and the tamper seal, then secure the load with approved tie-downs. The shipment carries the right placards, and routes are planned to avoid heat sources and long delays. Overpacks are certified through brutal drop, crush, and thermal tests, so even a serious accident is designed to be contained. At each handoff, truck to rail, rail to ship, the paperwork and measurements are rechecked. To the public, it looks uneventful. Inside the chain, it's careful, repetitive, and exact. At the enrichment plant, the first stop is a quiet bay where technicians verify the cylinder's ID, seal, weight, and assay. Does the paperwork match the atoms? Then the cylinder connects to a heated enclosure and autoclave. Warm it gently, and the UF6 inside sublimates to gas, flowing through filters into a feed manifold. From there, it enters long halls of centrifuges, narrow metal rotors whirling at incredible speed. Inside each rotor, the slightly heavier U-238 drifts outward while the slightly lighter U-235 concentrates toward the center. One machine barely nudges the mix. Thousands arranged in cascades do it gradually, step by step, until the gas reaches the target enrichment for power reactors. Two streams leave the cascade: product, with more U-235, and tails, depleted in U-235. Operators continuously sample and meter both, watching flows, temperatures, and pressures like pilots watching instruments. If a cylinder runs low, another takes its place. The first cools, leaving a small heel of solid UF6 that will be recovered later. Throughout, instruments feed a material accountancy system, so every gram is traced. When the product reaches the specified enrichment, typically a few percent U-235, it is directed into a waiting 30B cylinder, sealed, weighed, and prepared for its next transformation. From the moment a cylinder is logged in, the material enters a material balance area, basically a zone where every input and output must add up. Operators meter flows, sample streams, and reconcile weights, assays, and volumes so that the book number matches the physical number. Any difference has a name: MUF, material unaccounted for, and the goal is to keep it vanishingly small. Inspectors don't run the plant, they verify it. Checking seal IDs, repeating measurements, comparing today's serials with last month's photos, and auditing the trail from feed to product to tails. Some checks are non-destructive. like gamma measurements through the steel. Others take tiny samples for lab analysis. Periodically, the site performs a physical inventory where systems pause and everything is counted. The culture is simple. If the math is right at every handoff, the chain stays trustworthy. So the paperwork, the meters, and the metal all have to agree. Enrichment finishes in gas form, but reactors want ceramic. So the enriched UF6 takes a detour to chemistry class. In a sealed system, technicians warm the cylinder, draw the gas, and run it through controlled steps that turn gas into powder. First, UF6 meets moisture under tightly managed conditions, forming an intermediate. Then a reduction step converts that to uranium dioxide, UO2, a stable, fine black powder that doesn't react like the gas and is much easier to handle. Filters, dryers, and sifters tune the powder's particle size and flow, so it will press cleanly. Samples head to a lab to confirm the enrichment level and the chemistry meet spec. When the batch is cleared, it's staged in lidded bins bound for fabrication. The scary-sounding gas that rode in a sealed canister is now a quiet powder, ready to become fuel. Fuel fabrication turns powder into precision. Hydraulic presses compact UO2 into short, gray pellets. Think peanut in size. Those fragile green pellets go into a sintering furnace, hot enough to make the ceramic densify into rock-hard cylinders. After cooling, grinders shave them to micrometer tolerances, so each pellet fits the tube perfectly. Here's the punchline. One pellet can hold roughly the energy of a ton of coal in a space smaller than your fingertip. Now for the cladding. Long, silvery tubes of zirconium alloy that shrug off heat and corrosion while letting neutrons pass. A thin spring sits in each tube to keep the stack tight as pellets expand and contract. Machines load pellets, weld on end plugs, and check every joint. These completed fuel rods move to the assembly line, where spacer grids and end fittings lock dozens of rods into a rigid lattice. Designs vary. PWR bundles look different from BWR, but the idea is the same. Hold geometry exactly, let coolant flow, and endure years of full power operation. Final inspections weigh, measure, and X-ray samples before the assemblies are crated. What left the enrichment plant as gas now stands as gleaming geometry, the building blocks of a reactor's heart. Fresh fuel isn't hot like used fuel, but it is fissile, so safety focuses on geometry and spacing. Assemblies ride in certified packages or cradles that prevent damage and keep rods separated, even in a crash. Shipping papers specify criticality controls, tie-downs, and route plans. Carriers use approved trucks or rail cars and follow set temperature and moisture limits to protect the zirconium. At the plant, technicians open the shipping containers and perform incoming inspections, serials, weights, visual checks, and documentation. Samples go for dimension and weld verification. Any scuff or bend is flagged. Assemblies then move, underwater, into the spent fuel pool, a crystal-clear world where water provides both cooling and shielding. During a planned refueling outage, cranes and a precision refueling machine shuffle old assemblies out and new ones in, following a chessboard loading pattern designed by reactor physicists. Control rods, burnable absorbers, and fresh fuel together shape the core's reactivity and power shape. Once the last assembly clicks into place, the team performs a series of startup tests, leak checks, instrumentation checks, and low-power physics tests that confirm predictions. Operators withdraw control rods in careful steps to approach initial criticality, then guide the plant through a power ascension plan. The new fuel begins its multi-year job, turning atomic splits into steady heat and heat into steam. What started as a sealed canister has reached its destination, the core, ready to work. This chain is global, and that's its strength and its risk. Conversion, turning yellowcake into UF6, and enrichment capacity are concentrated in a handful of countries. Disrupt one node by policy, sanctions, or an industrial outage, and utilities scramble for SWU, separative work, and conversion slots. Long-term contracts cushion the shock, but spot markets can lurch and shipping routes can suddenly matter. Some nations diversify suppliers, others invest in domestic capacity or join assurance schemes like international LEU reserves. On the plant side, designs can sometimes stretch fuel cycles or adjust core patterns to ride out tight supply, but only within strict safety limits. The lesson for logistics: paperwork and steel are only half the story. The other half is policy and timing, and both can change faster than a centrifuge spins. Next-gen reactors and uprated cores are nudging fuel specs. Utilities increasingly talk about LEU+, slightly higher enrichment within the low-enriched range, to add margin and flexibility. Advanced designs look to HALEU, fuel enriched above 5%, and up to 20% U-235, which demands new cylinders, casks, and procedures tailored to higher assay. Around that shift grows a matching logistics layer, upgraded transport approvals, fresh accountancy rules, and new conversion and enrichment lines. It's the same conveyor belt you've seen: cylinder, seal, sample, ship, but tuned for tomorrow's fuels. If it all lands on time, the payoff is broader reactor options with fewer refuelings and higher efficiency, carried safely by smarter packaging and the same relentless paperwork. Follow that canister in your mind. Sealed, sampled, warmed to gas, spun in cascades, turned to powder, pressed into pellets, stacked into rods, locked into assemblies, and lowered into the core. From there, heat becomes steam. Steam becomes motion, and motion becomes the quiet hum behind a city's lights. The secret of enriched uranium's logistics isn't a single miracle. It's thousands of careful steps that add up to something extraordinary. Reliable power delivered by design. If you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe to our channel.